Okay, so this is lesson 4.5, and this is standard form of a linear equation. And we just talked about standard form versus slope-intercept form, so you have an idea of what it looks like. But right here, again, they write what that equation looks like, so you want to make sure that you know that. So that's really important. AX plus BY equals C. That is standard form. Okay, now notice that A and B are not both zeros in order for that to work. Also, a little study tip, any linear equation can be written in standard form. So remember, linear equations, what that means that when you graph it, it's going to give you a straight line, correct? Okay. So that's standard form. We're going to learn and focus today on how to graph standard form. So we have two ways of doing it. The first way is what we're going to do in example 1, and that's very simply just changing it from standard form into slope-intercept form, because we know that once it's in slope-intercept form, it's easy to graph, right? All right, so we're going to focus on slope-intercept form on the first example. So we're going to take our equation, negative 2x plus 3y equals negative 6. And we've already done this when we learned how to solve for y. So we want to get this so that y is all by itself. So what would be the first thing that I would need to do to get y by itself? Yep, add 2x to both sides. Okay, and when I do that, that gets rid of those. So that leaves us with 3y equals, now remember, slope-intercept form, we want the x term to go first, so 2x minus 6. Now, we still don't have y by itself, so what do we need to do next? Yes. Divide by 3. So when we divide this by 3, we get y equals. Now, remember that when we're dividing and we have more than one term, okay, we want to make sure that we are dividing both terms by 3. So we have 2x divided by 3, and we have negative 6 divided by 3. So we have to remember to do both of those. So 2x divided by 3 is the same as 2/3 x. And what's negative 6 divided by 3? Negative 2. So we just put minus 2. And this would be our slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And so now we are in slope-intercept form. Then we're going to use the slope and the y-intercept from this to graph the equation. So we know that this is our slope. Okay, so 2/3 is our slope. And we know that our y-intercept is right here. And so our y-intercept is negative 2. So the first thing we want to do is start with our negative 2 y-intercept. And since the y-intercept is negative 2, we're going to plot our first point at 0, negative 2. So 0, negative 2, and plot that point. Then we're going to use our slope, and our slope is 2/3. So that means we can go up to 1, 2, and over 3, 1, 2, 3, and plot that point. We also know 2/3 is equal to negative 2 over negative 3. So we also know that we can go down to 1, 2, into the negative 3. 1, 2, 3. So that gives me 3 points. Use your straight edge, draw your line, and that gives you your equation. Okay, so that is pretty simple. That's kind of using everything we already know. So for your work, you're going to do on your own 1, 2, 3, and 4. And on your at-home lesson, those will, I'll go over the answers to those in the at-home lesson. So the next page, we're going to look at another way to graph. So another way to graph these is instead of using slope-intercept form, we can use the x-intercept and the y-intercept. And we've talked about y-intercept. What is the y-intercept? What's that mean? Rainey? Yep. It's where the line crosses the y-axis. Okay. So if it's going to cross the y-axis, what do we know specifically about our ordered pair? Yeah, 0 and then the y value, right? So we're going to have something like that. Now, we're also going to use an x-intercept. What do you think an x-intercept is then? Yep. So it's where the line crosses the x-intercept, or the x-axis, sorry. And what do we know specifically about this ordered pair? Yep, the y is 0, and then you have your x value. Okay, so knowing that, if we take our standard form equation and we use the intercepts, that gives us 2 points. And then once you have those 2 points, you can draw a line. So we're going to do this problem together, and we're going to find it. So the first thing we're going to do is to find the x-intercept, we're going to substitute 0 for y. So I'm going to take my original equation, and we're going to take the y out and put a 0 instead. So it's going to be x plus 3 times 0 equals -3. 3 times 0 is 0. So we can get rid of that. And we have x equals -3. So from that, what ordered pair do we get? -3 is our x. And we substituted the 0 for the y, so we get 0. Okay? So that's 1 point that we get. Now, the other is to find the y-intercept. Oh, look, I just switched my colors. Not very good. Okay, to find the y-intercept, substitute 0 for x. So we're going to go back to the same equation. And instead of x, I'm going to put 0. All right, so we can get rid of that 0 because that's not going to change anything. So we get 3y equals -3. What do we do to get y by itself? Divide both sides by 3. And we get y equals -1. So what do we know about this ordered pair? It's going to be 0, -1, because we put 0 in for x, and y was -1. So now we go to our graph, and the x-intercept is -3. So we're going to plot -3, 0. So -3, 0, and we put our point there and we label that. And then we knew that our y-intercept is -1. So we're going to plot 0, -1. So 0, -1. And then once we have those 2 points, we would take our straight edge and we would draw our line there to give us our line. Now, you should also get used to labeling your lines of your equations. So we would just label this x plus 3, y equals -3. Okay, so that wasn't very hard either, was it? Okay, so now let's look at a real life application. And the real life application is very similar to the problems that we kind of looked at very quickly earlier when we were talking about standard form versus slope-intercept form. So you have $6 to spend. So that's the total amount that I have to spend. on apples and bananas. Graph the equation of 1 5/10 x plus 6/10 y equals 6, where x is the number of pounds of apples and y is the number of pounds of bananas. And then we also have to interpret the intercepts. Okay? So on this one, before we get started with any of the graphing, I will have you know that anytime you're going to interpret, you always want to make sure you label. And I don't like the fact that they don't put the labels on these. So the first thing I'm going to do is label my x and my y. So what do we know that x is standing for? The apples. So we were going to write apples, and that's in pounds. And then what do we know about this? This is what? The y? And the bananas in pounds. Okay, so now we're going to find our x-intercept. So when we find our x-intercept, we're going to take our equation, 1.5. Find the x-intercept, what do we have to set as 0? Y. So we're going to do 1/5 x plus 0.6 times 0 equals 6. So these two we can ignore. So we get 1/5 x equals 6. What do we do now? Divide by 1.5. And does anybody know what x equals? 4. Good. 4. So that gives us what ordered pair? 4, 0. Okay. Now we're going to do the y-intercept. So for this one, we need to set what as 0? X. So we're going to make x 0. Okay, and those become 0, so we can get rid of those because 0 plus anything is just itself. So we're going to divide both these sides by 0 and 6/10. So y equals 10. And then what ordered pair do we get for that? 0, 10. So now what you would do is you would plot those points. So I would go to 4, 0. So 4, 0 is right here. And then I would also go to 0, 10, which is right here. And then connect those points. Notice that since this is a real life situation, negatives don't make sense. So we would only use quadrant 1. We would not go into the negatives because that would not make sense in our problem. Now, this B is what they would expect if you have to interpret, and you will have to interpret on the test. So interpret means just tell me what the intercepts mean. So they say the x-intercept, can't talk. The x-intercept shows that you can buy 4 pounds of apples when you buy 0 bananas. And the y-intercept then shows you can buy 10 pounds of bananas when you buy 0 apples. Okay, and that's all there is to interpreting an intercept, is just saying what those coordinates mean. Any questions on that? Okay, so then you have 5, 6, and 7 as well. And you do have graphs over here if you need the graphs to help you to do on your own. So that's it for